good governance. Can I request Mr. Mukesh Jain, Chairman, ISTT Delhi Chapter, to give his opening address?
Thank you, Dr. G.P. Rao, and very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Professional associations have a very crucial role to play in branding the association, enlightening the members, and enriching the profession. Good governance is the key to ensure best practices and prevent ugly matters that we at times come across. Good governance has 8 major characteristics. It is participatory, consensus oriented, accountable, transparent, responsive, effective and efficient, equitable and inclusive, and follows the rule of law. ISTD Delhi chapter has initiated a series of deliberations with the veteran of various professional associations in India and neighboring countries to create a framework of governance and also offer competency development program for board and office bearers. Members of professional associations, academics, students and good citizens are invited to join us today in this first series. I welcome to Dr. Asha Bhandarkar, today's moderator, our veteran and distinguished panelist, Shri S.K. Swami, past President AIMA, Dr. A.K. Balyan, past President NIPM, Dr. Akhil Basrai, past President NHRD Network, and Dr. K.R. Gangadharan, past President ISTD, and our own Dr. G.P. Rao, Director, Good Governance Series. I also welcome senior members and office bearers of various associations and organizations, especially from NHRD, Global Compact, IOD, AIMA, NIPM, DMA, FMA, and Rotary and other associations, please. I once again welcome you all, sir, and ladies and gentlemen. Over to Dr. G.P. Rao.
Thank you. Thank you, Mukesh ji. Thank you, Mukesh ji. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as Mukesh ji has said, this series 2 is on good governance. So we'll have 4 rounds of webinars, and based on the deliberations and the insights and the inputs given by the panelists, we will work out a framework for good governance and also offer a program with the help of a business school on competency development of board members and office bearers. That's the objective. And today's, let me introduce today's moderator and the panelist. Okay. Our moderator is Dr. Asha Bhandarkar. The spotlight should be on her, not me. So she is a distinguished professor, organizational behavior at IMI. She has been teaching on HR and OB at various business schools, including ASCII, MDI, IIM Lucknow, and IMI. She has been a consultant and coach to the corporate world for over 35 years. She's been a visiting professor to various B schools globally. She was the Raman Munjal Hero Honda Chair Professor of Leadership Studies at MDI. She has written 8 books, 40 research papers, and spoke at various international conferences. We couldn't get a better person than Dr. Asha Bhandarkar to moderate the session today. Now thank you, Asha. Now we'll have the pleasure of introducing our veterans. Dr. Srinivasan K. Swami doesn't need an introduction. He's the past president of AIMA. He's the managing director and CEO of R.K. Swami BPTO and MD Hansa Vision. He's a leading personality of the Advertising Agencies Association and industry joint bodies relating to TV broadcasters and advertising agencies. His other business include market research and real estate development. He is credited with steering advertising industry for establishing sequential liability of advertiser relating to the TV medium. He's a veteran of management institutions in India, and he is currently an acting council member of AIMA. Welcome, Mr. Swami. Next in our panelist is Dr. A.K. Balyan. He is the past president of National Institute of Personal Management. He did his MTech from IIT Delhi and PhD from Germany. He worked for long years with ONGC till he became the director HR. Then he moved to Petronet LNG as the managing director. Then worked with Reliance ADSG, the CEO of oil and gas. And he has been the chairman of Carman ET Singapore. He's a veteran in the management field, a competent leadership trainer, keynote speaker, and a thought leader. He coaches and mentors many corporate leaders. Welcome, Dr. Balyan.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Dr. K.R. Gangadharan. He's the past president of India ISTD. He studied personal management, IR, labor welfare at Madras Work of Social Work. He, can we get the previous one? He studied economics at Madras. He did his PhD from Bharati Vidyapeeth, Pune. He started with personal and IR, then moved to general management at the board level in the corporate. And he's the president, International Federation on Aging. He has founded and been the head of Heritage Medical Center since 1994. He's a veteran in the management field and has spoken at various international conferences. Okay. Welcome, Dr. Gangadhar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Rao.
Last but not the least, our friend Dr. Akhil Basrai is the past president of National HRD Network. He's a gold medalist from XLRI. He has 47 plus years in the industry and all consulting. He has worked in HR roles with Unilever in Kenya, in India, Motorola, Asia Pacific countries, Shell in Malaysia, and IBM in India. He has been actively associated with management movement in India, have been the president of DMA, vice chairman of All India Management Institution Northern Region. He's in the National Council of CIA, ASSOCHAM, SHRM, and on board of several education institutes and corporates. He was awarded the Pathfinder Award by National HRD Network, adjudged among the most powerful HR professional in India at the Asia Pacific HRM Summit in Singapore. He is currently CEO of Akhil Basrai Consulting. Welcome, Dr. Akhil Basrai.
Thank you, GP Garu.
With those introductions, I will just like to inform our participant friends that this is a Zoom. So you by force will have to mute you. Kindly don't mind. Other than the panelist, all others will be muted. We have a chat box. Initially, the chat box was used for exchange of greetings, but during the session, you can use it for writing your questions. But if you write a capital Q, it will draw the attention of the moderator, the panelist. Write capital Q, write simple and short questions. It will draw the attention and you'll get priority over the other questioners. And during the panel, we'll have polls. So please participate in the polls, very easy, customer-friendly polls. We'll request you to do that. And towards the end, we'll have an open session on Q&A before we'll sum it up. Total around 90 minutes. We've already taken about 5-7 minutes. With that, I'll hand over to Dr. Asha Bhandarkar to moderate the series 1 of good governance. Dr. Asha Bhandarkar.
Thank you, and good evening to all colleagues who have taken the time to join in for this evening's webinar. Indeed, we have a very, very distinguished panel and with a wealth of experience. And I think they are the leading lights of their professions. And I think I congratulate Dr. G.P. Rao for having brought us people who have been, heading as past presidents of IMA, of ISTD, of NIPM, of NHRDN. So I think it's a great group of people here today. And I'm sure they have great ideas and they are going to enlighten this large group of people. I think we are 87 right now, and it's pretty big, who have logged in today for this webinar. So if you look at professional bodies, they're obviously volunteer bodies, and people do it for the love of it. And professionals like myself, for example, and I'm sure it's the case with all other professionals, we look to such bodies not only to enlighten, but to aid in our professional development so that we become better and better at what we do, and also develop greater amount of competency at what we do. So with this background in mind, and keeping in mind that we have people who are listening in who could be having various kinds of reasons for being here, and I'm sure one of them would be not only to understand, but also develop themselves as the leaders of good governance, if not in the present, and certainly in the future, depending on your age profile and where you are in the situation. So I'm now going to raise some issues because although there are very laudable reasons why professional associations exist. But the key question which emerges is, are they living up to the expectations of the people? And to be able to understand that a little better, I think it'll be good to remind ourselves why at all these associations exist. You know, one thing is that Mukesh ji mentioned that, okay, this is what is said legally, that we have laws, we comply with laws, etc. But how does it work in practice? So which is why I'm going to ask questions, and for the benefit of the audience, may I bring to your notice, we are going to have 3 rounds of questions, ladies and gentlemen. Each question, when it is raised, I would ask in no particular order to different people to speak up. And I'm going to ask them to speak only because we need to facilitate it in this kind of an audience. Otherwise, I don't think there is any such need. At the end of each round of the question, if you please feel free to put your question in the chat box if you want to raise any issue. And we will try to immediately respond to that before we go to the next round. So this is the format for your kind information. So we'll go to the first question now. And first question we will ask our senior most and veteran gentleman, that is Mr. R.K. Swamy. Sir, the question for you is, what are the objectives of professional associations? Why do they exist? What are they supposed to do? And if you have a couple of examples you can share of successful associations, and what is it that has made them successful? Over to you now, sir. You will have about, what, 4-5 minutes, GP?
3 minutes I was told.
3 minutes, okay.
That's what the brief was sent. The brief said,
Yes, sir.
I don't mind.
Yes.
You can speak as long as you want. Okay, thank you for the nice introduction. Mukesh, when Mukesh orders to be part of the panel, I can't say no, he's a very, very old friend. He's obviously part of IMA as well when I was president. Big supporter. He came down to my daughter's wedding in Chennai. So I have always very high regard for him. But
Thank you, sir.
So coming to the question that you raised, you know, as you know, there are many types of associations.
Yeah.
And each of these types of association have different objects that they need to have. Obviously, there are industry associations, and their primary purpose actually is to get together to see what they need out of various governments or some statutory bodies or whatever. So there are lobby organizations, lobby associations, industry associations like that, and they have a very, very specific agenda. And normally, because of the influence that they need to wield, they also would take as their members senior people from the industry, particularly the executive committee or ManCom, whatever, will be generally packed with very senior people. And the principal objective of them is not to have a good time, but actually focus on building their own businesses with whatever help they can get from these associations. Then, of course, the second segment of the association will be some niche associations. They again are not necessarily not for lobbying, but they also do some lobbying. For example, there is an association called Advertising Standards Council of India. It is again a professional body which actually pulls up advertisement which make false claims, and they then connect to the government of India to make sure that if the advertiser is not withdrawing the ad or modifying the ad, they get the IMB ministry to take action against the airing company. There's also consumer associations there are plenty of that available. Again, trying to be on the side of the consumer, but again, the objects are very, very, very different for those associations because it's not going to be for lobbying, but it's to be supporting them, so supporting the consumer based on what laws that needs to be used and what kind of Consumer Protection Act, what modifications required and all this. So they have very, very niche requirement, and they based on that go. We also have an association like the International Advertising Association, both in India and elsewhere. I happen to be the world president of the International Advertising Association, and I work with 56 countries, so I can also bring some experience from there. when you have a very large association with the 56 countries involved, the objects are principally only three. Just how do we get advertising to be respected all over the world? How advertising actually can be the engine for economic growth? How self-regulation advertising is very critical so that somebody will not govern us. And of course, today's privacy world, how do we deal with heightened consumer privacy needs? At the same time, we have privacy needs. The specific targeting of advertising is not possible because if you start prying to the consumer based on whatever digital means you have, you actually kind of not following the laws of the land. So you need to have, again, within the four walls of the law, how do we do what we need to do? Something we need to think about. And of course, there are clubs. You know, there is advertising club, there is a Rotary Club, and there is very charitable organization. So that again are primarily for networking, and they also do good work. And last but not the least, there are some good NGOs doing healthcare work, education work, and those objects again are very different from what a CIA or association kind of association would have. So what you really want to do actually is embedded within two covers called the memorandum of that association or of the professional body, and the bylaws that follow that are articles. Somebody calls articles, somebody calls a bylaw, somebody calls if it's a Section 8 company, there'll be again articles being used. So those would tell you what kind of a governance structure you should have, how a president gets elected, how you going to get the general body going, what powers general body we should have, what powers the board should have, all of them embedded there. I don't know whether I should get into that now, whether it's going to come in later, but I leave it to, I'll stop now. If there are any supplementary questions you want to add, you can add. Otherwise, you can ask somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swami. Who would like to take it up next? Dr. Balya and Dr. Basrai?
Yeah, okay. Pick it up. So I think we need to. I would speak from my experience as the national president of NIPM for 2 sessions, and from 2006 to 2010. And also some experience leading the Delhi Management Association. I think the NIPM, if you see, my experience has been that this is perhaps one of the oldest HR-related professional association in the country. It had its focus on the labor laws and industrial relations as it started, had a close collaboration with the ILO to frame its overall working. Over a period of time, of course, it evolved itself into a personal management organization. And I think, like many other organizations, such organizations are driven by a mission, to my mind. Now, this mission is more towards undertaking a service. Of course, there's a different question how far they are successful in doing that, but I think it is really driven by a mission, and it is driven by people who believed very much in that, and they were fully dedicated on that. That's how the organizations have taken birth of that. The service also is, in terms of, if you see, has a focus on social and humanitarian aspects of that. The purpose, to my mind, the objective has been always, although it is evolving with time, because they work very closely with the industry. They work very closely with people, and therefore the focus has been only on personal development, developing people in what way? One is to make them available to the industry. So there were programs, sharing of knowledge through their journals, their publications, as also undertaking their own programs, training programs, courses, to train people and transform them into a performing professional, actually. The industry needs also, to my mind, look to such professional bodies to source people, to send their people for their advancement of their knowledge, their competencies, their skills also in terms of overall management. But I think the focus has been largely on developing people, their competencies in a mission mode. Now, over a period of time, I see that many of the organizations have evolved themselves and have gone transforming themselves, suiting to the needs of the country, of the people, the industry, basically industry where they would really be repracticing themselves. Where organizations who have taken note of this change of transition have been successful. Some of the organizations, to my mind, have lagged behind because they did not realize that the industry's expectations have moved ahead in different directions and they have not been able to keep pace with them. So there's somehow the mission part of that, keeping pace and doing that was perhaps lost on this. I think evolving a governance model also has been a part of this thing. They were governed in different ways. For example, NIPM has what they call it, a national council here. Of course, there are elected president, national president, and there are a kind of a federal system where each region has a representation and are represented over there in the national body of national council. But I think the overall governance, to my mind, definitely needs a relook. Most of the organizations, to my mind, have not really kept pace with the changing times, changing requirements of the business, of the profession itself, and therefore have really been out of tune with the present requirement. I feel that there has to be a mechanism in the governance of these all such organizations to review a periodic review as to whether they are really in sync with the present day requirement or the governance requires what changes and all. So an open mind, an open way of looking and constant reviewing, creating new models of governance. I think this is first part perhaps most of the organizations have lacked. Few of them, at least I know that. I'll stop right now, Professor Bhandakar, right now. Be happy to take up any questions or any other comments later on.
Thank you, Dr. Balyan. Great. Akhilji, your turn.
Thank you, Dr. Bhandakar. I'll restrict my thought to professional bodies that we are representing in this panel and also most of the audience. So professional bodies, I feel there are 4 basic tenets on which every professional body starts. And very rightly said by Dr. Balyan, whether they continue or not is a different thing. The first one is to provide a platform where like-minded, common professional people get a chance to meet each other. And that networking is amazingly powerful, where they get to meet people from the same profession, background, and same interests and same worries. So the assembly of people and networking with each other is a very powerful part on why these organizations exist. The second one is a benchmark where exchange of best practices happens. What are you doing and what am I doing? Can we learn from each other? What are other people doing? And I think this informal way of learning, if you go over the history of some of these organizations, they have provided amazing amount of insight. Some have gone to do more research on that, but otherwise benchmarking with each other, picking up a phone, meeting and exchanging notes and learning from each other is a very major learning and upward journey movement. The third one is the upliftment of knowledge itself. Can we do something that upgrades the professional knowledge? So all the programs and training events and research papers done, collaboration done. So they bring knowledge into a funnel situation, into sharp focus, and these organizations help achievers do that. Excuse me. I think one of the most important role that these organizations, professional bodies play is an opportunity for role modeling. This is some of the younger professionals, when they attend this, they look at people who have got experience, who've been in the profession, and they start having this formation or role model. I won't go very far. In my college days, when I joined the Indian Society for Applied Behavioral Sciences, and whenever as a bacha at that time, going and attending meetings to see Pulin Garg and Indira Parikh and Dr. Gangopadhyay from IIM, and then you say, wow, these are the people I want to grow up to be one day. And this is not trivializing it. This is one of the roles on which role modeling is done, and that is a role of the association. But these associations have to ground themselves. They have to remain focused, delivered on this opportunity for network. More chapter-centric activities where local people get to participate, not always at the cost, but get an opportunity to meet people, learn from each other, benchmark, and get to expand their professional knowledge and connections so that their work and learning gets facilitated. I think Dr. Balyan hit upon a good thing, that they will evolve. And these associations, those who have evolved over a period of time and kept pace with time, have become attractive. They attract members, more members. Some organizations become obsolete by the way they conduct themselves, or they are left behind and they lose attractiveness. So keeping yourself and state of art, moving, especially now with the advent of technology, some of these organizations, those who have moved with the times, moved and getting more younger leadership involved, have done very well, and they have much brighter future than some of the organizations which have become archaic and little stale. So Asha, back to you, Asha.
Thank you.
Asha, before we get Dr. Gangadhan in this round, I would expect the objectives piece together. Okay.
It is about objectives.
Yeah. Yes.
So briefly about objectives, Dr.
Yes,
Ganga.
Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you, Asha. Now, I think I probably bring in a little bit of international perspective as well. I think I first touch upon why do I become a member of an association. I become a member of an association because I feel part of a profession that I'm involved in, and I want to meet seniors who have probably shared a lot of their experience. For example, the moment we see Dr. T.B. Rao here, all of us immediately think, how do we reach him? The knowledge they gain. I think that's the purpose for which I become a member of an association. So the goal orientation is extremely important when I talk about the membership. The second thing that I thought is important was on, yes, networking becomes important, as Dr. Akhil rightly pointed out, because ultimately I really reach out to people. The third important aspect that I think, as far as goals are concerned, I think one of the purpose of an association is also an ability to influence the policies of the government. I was a board member of the International Federation of Aging, based in Toronto. I think I was there in every meeting of the United Nations in New York. I was there in every meeting of the United Nations Asia Pacific region. I was in WHO on aging. All these issues, I was invited primarily to share, what exactly we need. By doing this, what is happening is we are reaching out to those countries that have no financial capacity, economic capacity, where we reach. There are times when probably people like us have addressed the parliaments and assemblies, not in India, outside India, because they want you to share your experience with them, connect them. I think that is the third purpose for which an association exists, is to share your experience. And probably I'll stop with the fourth point. It's a culmination of experts. I think it is just a body of professionals wherein you bring the experts together. So we share knowledge. When you're talking about writing a book, I think ISTD writing a book, or NIPM writing a book, and HRD network writing a book has a lot of implications vis-a-vis, the experts who are contributing to that. I think we draw the expertise into this. I think I see a purpose in continuing a membership. Probably I became a lifetime membership for a variety of reasons, but the purpose of becoming a member is extremely selfish. I think this is where probably some of us have conflict with the organization in the long run. I would like to stop here with those 4 points.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Before we go to the Q&A, because there are 4 questions I think we can take up.
Asha,
Yes?
you just you sum it up this part. There's a poll
I'm
I want
quickly
to
summing
take.
it up. I'm quickly
Yeah.
summing it up. That's what I was just about to say, Dr. Rao, that after that we will take up the 4 questions.
No, I'm taking a poll now, immediately after this.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
okay, just give me about...
I think you can have the poll and then she can probably for some time.
See,
okay,
the
since I'm the
time.
moderator, I'm taking the final call. Gentlemen, just relax. Yeah. So what was interesting is this diversity of the panel, what it has brought out is there are different types of industry bodies and associations. And dominantly service orientation is what is emerging, you know, as the raison d'etre of their existence, the reason why they have begun. And they serve beautifully as role models. They serve beautifully for the purpose of networking, and they serve beautifully for the purpose of enhancement of the professional knowledge and development. These are the 3 things I can crisply say is what is the summary of what we have discussed right now. Over to you for the...
Yes, wonderful. So what I thought is, instead of asking questions, we want to take the opinion of the entire collective sitting here. According to him, what are the objectives of a professional institution? We want to ask them. Okay, Alok, can you help me with a poll? Dear participants, there will be a poll on your screen. Just participate, will take a few seconds only. There are 10 options. What in your view are the top 3 key objectives of a professional institution? You can tick as many as 3. The network will not allow you to take more than 3. So there are 10 options.
Dr. Rao, panelists can also participate?
No, sir. I also cannot participate. Okay, wonderful. Can the participants start participating in the poll? Yeah, already they have started. Wonderful. Ah, great. It's speed. Oh, they're all IT savvy people. Akhil, you have made all of us IT savvy. You just see this is speed with which they are doing. Already 27 people have voted. Yeah, 33%. Yeah, 38, 40%. You can see the percentage of votes. Yeah. So that means a very, very alert, sensible audience. They want to be part of the discussion here. 60% people have already voted in less than a minute. 63. So what percentage I should stop, Akhil?
3 minutes.
No. Normally we do 1 or 2 minutes only. It's fun, no? It's fun, but good. 63% have already voted. We'll keep for another maybe half a minute. It's good. Yeah, go ahead, participants. I will tick. Okay. We'll count 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 71% of people have participated. Let's see, according to them, what are the objectives. So according to them, the topmost objective is to augment and disseminate knowledge, skills, and approaches relevant to profession. The body should augment and disseminate also. The second one, according to, is build bonding in the profession. Like, I want to meet Dr. T.V. Rao, it's impossible to do that. So, I mean, the profession should help me in doing that. And third one is conduct research and share findings through articles, magazines, and journals. These are the top 3. Audience, I hope you have seen this. Can you write S? One of the audience can write S. Have you seen the poll results? I think some audience, even if one person write S, I know that you have seen. Yeah, they all seen. Okay, Asha, I'll stop the sharing now. Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay.
Shall I raise the questions now, please?
Yeah, now it's over to you now.
Yeah, there are some 4 very nice questions. I'll go one by one, and then any of you just, take it up. Attributes for successfully running an association. Dr. Ganga.
Attributes for successful running an organization, I think core purpose is the goal, the purpose for which I became a member. I think that's one. Two, how well the body is run. Do they have an influence with the government to ensure the policy making comes from the government? I think that's a big influence I have. The third, is there a knowledge sharing among the members? Is it really good? And fourth, there is a good governance? Are they transparent? Are there good leadership? And do I get all information that I need whenever I need? These are the four attributes I think are important.
Excellent, sir. Thank you so much. Characteristics of good governance, Dr. Balyan.
Well, there are several, studies that have listed down what all are necessary. There is, of course, an international standard on ISO 26000, which also talks about the governance. There is a Global Association of Risk Professionals, GRP, which has laid down some 4 specific issues that on which the governance is based. And then, of course, there's the United Nations Economic and Social Commission, UNESC, which has given the 8 clear characteristics which our friend Mr. Mukesh Jain talked about in his welcome address. But I think there are 5 best practices which I'd like to really share on that. The one is to build a very strong, qualified governing board. It may be a national council, you call it a board, you call it a governing body, whatever it is, where you have, where you are looking at strategic leadership. Number 2 is that to have a very clear roles and responsibilities defined. Unless that is there, there would be confusion. Number 3 is the emphasis on integrity and ethical dealing. That's very important. Presently, is perhaps one of the more important characteristics. 4th is to have a performance evaluation mechanism and make it a kind of a basis for all kind of performances and to how to measure them. And then, of course, it's very important to have create a very effective risk management. Apart from, of course, being a very transparent one, a participatory one, a responsive one, and to be effective and efficient. I think they're all part of that. But these 5 corporate governance best practices, I think, encompasses all these characteristics.
Thank you, sir. That was really enlightening. In addition to this, any tools of good governance, Dr. Akhil Basra, you want to highlight? Or read these?
Yeah, I feel that Ganga mentioned it very nicely, that there must be objective and professional goal and transparency. So I feel that the organization's objective is all known to everybody, but how is it executed and how it's converted into activities is the responsibility of the leadership team. Now, many of these formal organizations we are talking about is the personality of the leadership that comes in decides on the pace and the type of activities that the professional body takes, which is actually the right thing to do because that's what the leadership brings to the table. But there must be one section of organization goal which is continuum to the whole objective of that organization. And IMA did it very well. If you remember, Mr. Swami, that the whole land acquisition in Rohtak or someplace was done over a series of 6 or 7 presidents. That goal remained. Now, one part of the governance, I feel, Asha, is that the leadership team must act as a trustee, not as office bearer. In some cases, we see where there's election or selection. Sometimes the tenure is 1 year, in some places it's 2 years. So if the role is seen as a trustee, then everything falls into place. As a trustee, the leadership then looks at cost from a very different perspective, controls the cost. It makes sure that the member-centric activities are organized and come away from event management for the sake of it, or sometimes for earning. Earning is not a bad word. We must break even and also keep aside something for an organizational goal in long term. But the trustee role is important because sometimes in some organizations, there are ethical issues which come up. And sometimes it causes tremendous amount of heartburn and bad blood amongst members, and they lose respect. The organization loses respect. And so this avenue to resolve some of these sensitive issues, and if you're talking about being a role modeling organization, then avenues for ombudsmen, avenues for redressal, avenues for ethical practices, making sure that the leadership is not seen in out of context with the way they are preaching something and practicing the same thing. And at the end of the day, it is the performance of activities by the leadership team that is important. So I feel there must be some accountability on what they deliver and what they promise to deliver and whether they deliver or not. And that would only happen if there's transparency. So I think put together everything in small bits put together, you have a healthy organization. There may be disagreement, there may be difference of opinion, that's all right, it's very healthy. But the direction is clear, and transparency means everybody knows where we are going, why we are going there, and whether we are going there or not.
Okay, thank you. There's a googly question for Dr. Swami. Swami, sir, doctor, sir, honorary doctorate, because you're sitting in the company of all doctorates. So who is responsible for good governance? That's the question which is coming up.
Mr. Swami.
I'm happy to answer that. I think everything flows from the top.
Okay.
We need to make sure that we elect a good president. Okay, and like what Dr. Basa was saying, he's actually the chief of trustees. He's the managing trustee or whatever you may call it. He has to actually be above board and everything. He has to actually get all the people to participate in the activities of the body, make it as inclusive as possible and as transparent as possible. He has to carry there's no point in actually showing a muscle power of voting. You need to actually carry the people along. And actually all that actually means a good leader is very, very critical to take some of the hard decisions in a very collaborative manner.
Okay, great.
Very well put.
Next question now, is that okay?
Yeah, I think we go to the round 2.
Round 2, yeah. So round 2 is around performance, because at the end of the day, every entity, organization is judged by what it delivers. And for its sustainability and long-lasting life, what it delivers is important. If it doesn't deliver, then it ceases to exist, unless there are artificial means by which it can be, kept alive on oxygen or something like that. But that is not available with volunteer organizations. So question to all of you panelists is how to improve governance to make associations more sustainable and more performing. And maybe this time we can start with Dr. Akhil.
Thank you, Asha.
Yes.
Governance is manageable only if there is transparency. And there should be abject transparency in an organization, ability to raise a red flag if something is going wrong, or praise something and celebrate if something is going right. Governance is all about clarity as to what are the things we cannot do, should not do. And once that is clearly articulated, then everybody is clear. It's not about bureaucracy. It's not about rules, regulation, how to govern ourselves. The word governance doesn't mean how to govern ourselves. What governance is that we govern ourselves correctly and without much effort, because it becomes part of your own ethos and a commitment to run a high integrity organization. And what Mr. Swami mentioned, that it starts at the top. It's the leadership team that sets the pace. And the governance is keeping a third eye open for anything that is going out of the place. And if we don't keep the third eye open, or we are not made to see the third eye, sometimes we miss it. There must be a way, an avenue for somebody to point out. And that should be actually a part of the process, that somebody can raise a flag and say, I think we are going a little away from our path. We should look into it. And it's not offensive, but those organizations which have transparency, where people can point out something and it's taken in a good spirit and corrective measures are taken, will survive for much longer period, serving the purpose of which they were formed.
Thank you, Doctor. May we now request Mr. Swami?
Yeah, I think at the core of any association is actually the activities or performance that it's expected to do. You can actually have a president, or you can have a group of people warming their chairs, or you can really have people who with a sense of purpose, can do something about it that year. I've seen both kinds of people, both kinds of group actually in associations. I know presidents actually on the very first day they take over the office, they put out an agenda for the year. They say, look, this is how my year is going to pan out, and these are a few things I will be doing. Definitely, these are things I'm going to try to do because it's a long-term project, and these are things I will not do. Okay, so sometimes it's better to also say what I will not attempt, because it will be done in the past and therefore it's not going to work for us. But certainly what I want to do, 3-5 things definitely by the end of the year will be achieved. Make it transparent from day one, and go after that in a manner with all the people to support you on that. And then I think you will have a much stronger association or body when you leave the office 1 year later or 2 years later, whatever the time frame is.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Balyan, it's your turn now.
Yeah, I think when we talk about performance, I feel the accountability for performance outcomes is the perhaps key to the governance. Actually, it's very, very important. This is the aspect which the associations must really focus. Unfortunately, we find that there is no formal process or a structure or a framework that is being used by the associations. Different associations follow different ways. But I think important thing is that there has to be clear, tangible, intangible results that need to be listed that the association would want to complete within a time frame. There should be defined tasks, to my mind, tasks which are measurable, also with some definite timeline. Dr. Akhil Basrai told about some acquisition of this thing which continued for 7-8 years. Now, there could be problems, but then again, there has to be some timeline set. At least attempts to be made with the tasks to achieve them in a timeline. There could be perhaps priority list of that. These are the priority lists. There are 100 things to be done. But okay, as Dr. Swami said, that this year or this period, we will prioritize as per the requirement of the association. These are important, and there is a consensus of that. Now, how do you prioritize? That's also important that you carry everyone along with you, not just that you as a president or a national head, you take a decision and then you run into trouble of not really being able to achieve that. So important is that we really have a consensus developed in the setting the agenda. Then there is no mechanism also, to my mind, which measures over a period of time that how far we have done, no reviews as such. So there could be a possibility of having some structured reviews. Can we talk about, for example, some kind of KPIs that, okay, we try to work on a corporate mode that, okay, we assign these KPIs for not just the CEO who owns the larger responsibility, but all the members of the board or the governing body members of this thing. For example, I started one, what we used to call an ATR, action taken report. So every next meeting, we would put a action taken report on what was decided, what has been done, what are the problems, and how we are placed on that, so that everybody is trying to really come to a level that, yes, whether this is okay, we are moving, kind of a review also takes place. So I think there's various views, but I think there is a need to really develop some framework for tangible as well as intangible kind of outcomes with timelines And I think best thing would be to have small steps, tasks identified to be completed in a given time frame. And also, like we have in the board subcommittees, maybe we can have some groups of people assigned so that we achieve what we really decide to undertake as an action on that. I'll stop here, Dr. Bhandakar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now, I think Dr. Swami is
Gangadharan, Dr. Gangadharan.
Dr. Ganga, I'm sorry.
Don't worry. Thank you, Dr. Shah. Now, I think when you're talking about performance, I just want to give an example of an organization based in Washington, D.C. It's called AARP. AARP is the only organization in the world which has only individual members. They don't have membership organizations, only individual organization. They have on their rolls 38 million members. 38 million individual members. And their income is running to approximately $625 crore is their annual income. The whole governance model is only with 11 board members, the entire country. 11 board members manage it. They generate that kind of an income. They get a lot of properties bequeathed, a lot of donations come, a lot of corporate donors come. But understand why people become member there. Two reasons. Number one, there is no president in the last 30 years, US president, who have not gone to the AARP studio and addressed their members. It's a very, very big influence that they have. 38 million people are listening to the president talking in USA to decide whom to vote. That's one big thing. I think that's one standard on which my membership increases. I would like to have more members. By doing what I'm doing is influencing the policy making of the country. That's the first thing. The second thing is income generation. The income generation becomes important because AARP has full-time staff. In Washington, they have 650 staff working, serving the members across the globe. Majority of the members are from US, but a lot of them from across the world. You and me can become a member. They service the member. And if you can just go to the website of AARP, you will find a lot of information. I think that is the transparency that we are talking about. I think membership, I'm talking to individual members, I'm not talking about trade association. It's very important membership value in it. I think that's a second basis on which I evaluate whether I should continue to be a member of that. Even if I do not get any benefit, simply paying $15 a year, I know it benefits huge number of people across the world in terms of policy. I think we are all talking about the courses. I think all professional associations like NIPM, ISTD have started their courses, one-year diploma courses. I think probably these two associations have not made it almost mandatory for the corporates to engage them because they are qualified by them. But for that, I think this qualification is very, very important for the institution to recognize them as a body. The third, there are always inactive and active members. Absolutely. I use the word inactive and superactive. Superactive members are very, very few. Inactive members are majority. The superactive members make a lot of influence on the image of the organization. Now, can we use the superactive members to ensure that they are able to build a proper image for the organization? That could be the yardstick on which I assess an organization. And I'm outside. The last one is the point of accountability. I think accountability is an important factor on which both image and membership develops. That's the fifth point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. So,
I would request you to sum it up.
Yes,
then I'll take the poll.
Absolutely. So it's been a beautiful and very interesting round. Thank you, gentlemen, for your crisp and clear, observations. And since I'm also on the board of PNB, I'm seeing the commonalities between a business organization and voluntary associations. There's not that much of a difference. So transparency, number one, is the most important. Agenda setting is critical. The third eye approach is relevant. You have to ultimately deliver what you promise to deliver, because that's how you're measured. You have to be accountable. That means you have to be able to share what you're doing and take responsibility for what you said you will do. Consensus in agenda setting will help because then people operate in a common direction to achieve the objectives. Of course, we have to be self-critical and self-responsible, which means we need proper frameworks through which we review our own functioning. And I think, to my mind personally, the whole thing will work if right from the beginning, I'm able to make transparent commitments so that everybody can see me and ultimately everybody judges and evaluates. So thank you. So that's my quick.
Okay. Dear friends, we'll have one more poll. You have listened to the panelists on the performance criteria. Well, I will give you 10 options. You choose the top 3 priorities. Alok, can we have the poll too? Mr. Alok Agarwal, yeah. This is the poll. What should be the top 3 criteria of performance of professional associations? There are 10 options. You can choose as many as 3. Same drill, all of you. Yeah. It just takes a few seconds only. Yeah. Oh, people have started. Wonderful. You listen to the panelists, but then you apply your own mind and prioritize those. Which one should be the top performance parameters? All are important, but some are more important. Yeah, 25%, 31%. No, it's faster. This round, the polling pace is higher. 47%, 50%. Very nice. Some more, 65%. Yeah. So now we'll do that 10 to 1 counting, reverse counting. You do it fast. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We will stop here. I'm ending the poll. Now, what is the topmost that has come? 57% people have liked it. Regular communications to the members individually, not putting on the notice board. Then the immediate one with 54% is ethical standards of the leadership team and the paid employees following the code of conduct. That is the second one, 54%. Then one more, 51%. Members' engagement and timely addressing the concerns of the members. So these came as the top 3 performance parameters. Okay, the highest is regular communication to members individually. Members probably would like to feel attached, connected with us. Okay, I will stop sharing and we will take a 1 or 2 questions and then go to round 3. Asha, over to you.
Thank you. So for this round, I see 2 things which are emerging. One is an observation and one is a question. The question says, what should we do to assess if a professional body is on the right track? Swamiji?
All right.
Senior most.
The professional bodies actually intrinsically know whether they're right track or not, actually, if they really run professionally. You don't need to have somebody coming and telling them they're wrong track, right track. I think, as I said earlier, everything flows from the top. And if you have the right leader elected, the chance of something not being done as per the governance level set by anybody would be compromised. I'm sorry, I'm going back to what I said earlier. I think if you really want to have an organization which is clean and superb and You don't need to have everybody coming and, nosing over it. You need to have the top leadership which is clean and very supportive of what the organization needs. If you don't have that, I think you're dead in any case.
Okay, okay, great. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Another interesting observation which has been made and which is at the heart of a lot of issues which are going wrong in professional associations, lack of ownership and accountability in headquarter teams has been flagged as a major concern area. And what is it that we can do about it? Gentlemen, anybody?
So I didn't get the question.
They're saying lack of ownership and accountability in headquarter teams is the major concern area. So what do we do about this? How can we handle it?
No, as I said, then I think if the...
No, maybe I'll give a chance to one of the others now. Dr. Balyan.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Swami very rightly said, the accountability, as earlier also said, is perhaps one of the basic requirement seen and important from the functioning point of view. Once the body is elected or selected, very often they go into kind of a hibernation that, okay, I am now there for this much period, I'll do one or two things and that's all. This happens very often on that. So lack of application, no checks on this thing, whether you are really working or not, whether you have made commitments or not. Is there any kind of system in the governance that the CEO can be questioned, can be asked, to explain why this is not being done? I think we need to really have that kind of a mechanism also in the governance where the leadership, which everybody is looking for a direction, a strategic direction. And if that is not coming, question the leadership that, well, if that's not there, then why do you continue? I think, to my mind, it's very important. Unless there is an ownership, you just can't function. There won't be enough drive to really carry out your agenda. So if the ownership is not there, then what should be done? In that point, I think either you create alternative options of governance or some other mechanism on this, so that we have the right team there, led by a leader who is really competent and is really involved, has the ownership to give the strategic direction to the organization.
Great, great. Thank you. One more question before we proceed. Will frameworks for good governance change as work moves to online virtual platforms? Because the way work is moving, what is the impact of that on frameworks for good governance?
Well, just one point here. I'll
Sure.
the other panelists also. So, for example, in NIPM, we had started this thing that many of the functioning should be put on online. Even the communication, besides communication, the election process also should be online. Discussion or documentation should be online, and the organization has moved to that direction actually.
Okay.
So I think, to my mind, it is an obvious direction. To my mind, my understanding that most of the organization are really striving to go more on automation, transparency. It brings in transparency. It brings in real progress to each member. So I think this is the direction most of the organizations perhaps are following.
Thank you.
Asha, I will attempt this.
Yes, Dr. Akhil.
This is not static. It's not rigid. Governance is relevant to the time we are in. As long as we are delivering on the basic foundation objective of the organization, that is good governance. And of course, ethics are all fixed, they are rigid, they are solid. Now, if the leadership team is sensitive to the changing times, then adopting state-of-the-art futuristic programs is good governance. And I'll give you an example, and I'm not saying because I'm from HRD network, but we worked out a framework on HR competency long time ago, HRscapes. Now that is the type of seminal work that the industry will benefit when we roll it out. A lot of programs now we are doing, when I say we, the National HRD Network is doing, So is, of course, NIPM on online programs. Now, some of them are forced because of the COVID. Some of them were planned. The point I'm making is that the organization in terms of governance must look at the big picture. Are we making impact on the profession? So good research work, good conceptual work, and are we moving with the time? If the time is moving towards online, if today Harvard and MIT are doing classes online, there's no reason why we should be lagging behind. So moving with the time is a responsibility of the leadership team. They cannot say that, and I like the way Dr. Balyan mentioned that sometimes these leaders, they take their coming there as an achievement, whether it is elected or selected. And not all of them, but some of them. And that organization you can see is lackluster. Some leaders come and put spark into the organization. I think we should make sure that this personality-driven change is replaced by organization directive and something moves because it is mandated. And what Swami also mentioned earlier, that if you have an accountability for doing something, and whether you are doing or not, whether you are measuring it or not, must be part of the governance. So futuristic, seminal work impacts a larger population than your own organization.
Okay.
Anything,
Yes,
Dr. Ganga?
Yeah. See, I think when I quoted particularly the ARP example, I personally feel there are times when I think majority of the Indian associations lack staff. You all work with limited staff, and then there is always a problem of governance. Because it's probably the president who is very influential to make a decision and then gets it executed through one person. I think the international associations have taken a different approach altogether. They all have a lot of staff. They recruit staff. They have a huge number of managers to service members in different perspectives. They also manage an organization through income generation. Revenue generation is an important aspect of the international organizations, and therefore reaching out to membership enrollment is an enormous work international associations do. I think they look at membership as a base for the continuance. Very basis of continuing their association is membership. I think if we are not going to reach it, we are going to be counting our money, not wanting to spend 100,000 rupees for a executive director or a secretary, then we are in trouble. But we are all, definitely in India, we struggle a lot with a lot of corrupt practices. And also we have some problems of equations, power equations. I think what is happening, the governance is getting corrupted when two individuals, namely the executive director or the CEO that you recruited, and the president who comes in every 1 year or 2 years, depending on the organization, there is an imbalance. There is just instability. I think continuing the actions of the previous board decisions are very important. I feel that we should not compromise on that. If you're able to continue that, I think the organization get richer, they get robust. I think we need to do that without calculating money that we spend on the staff will help us grow a bigger organization. And I'm very sure this is going to be very helpful, particularly when we are on virtual platform. Thank you.
Yeah. There is one observation. Even websites are not updated. What to talk of ownership, accountability, and transparency.
Yeah.
Raising the issue that the various bodies have to be more responsive on these matters.
Yes. We'll move ahead, Asha. We are running short of time.
Okay.
Third round, 10 minutes.
All right, no problem. And I think it's a pretty quick one because it's pretty straightforward question. Gentlemen, what is the profile of an effective board member and how to develop such competencies? This is the question, and this time we'll start with Dr. Akhil.
What is the profile of the board members or leadership team?
And how to develop such competencies? Effective board member.
Effective board member, we have discussed this amongst all the four, mentioned one thing, accountability. The board member must...
Profile in terms of behaviors.
In terms of behavior.
What kind of person? What kind of person?
What kind of a person?
To come to specific, I think they should listen to the members' feedback.
Okay.
They must be sensitive to the feedback from the members and make sure that they are agreeable to the direction the organization is on. Otherwise, the board does not speak up in itself that we are not in the right direction. There is a defective board.
Wonderful.
Yes. Dr. Balyan, please.
Well, I think when we are talking about what kind of person should be there, what kind of competencies you look for in the leadership team, you know, I think the first thing would be when you have looking for a strategic leadership, you're looking somebody who could lead and give the direction to the organization. So to my mind, must have clarity on the role and also a broader picture on the vision that where he wants to drive the organization in what direction. So a strategic leadership, to my mind, is very important. There are, of course, other I would like to mention is like have full commitment to the organization, the ownership thing. Should have confidence that he can drive that. If you have all those things, if you're not really confident, it becomes very difficult. There is nothing that can be done in isolation today. So there should be a collaborative approach, to my mind. So people, leadership, we look for that collaborate. And I'm seeing a very positive thing happening right now in India, where the three major professional associations, NIPM and HRDN and ISD, are really thinking of coming together to really organize. Yes. This is wonderful, actually. And then there has to be some creative, innovative thinking on that. To my mind, things are changing. The way business is done is changing. The environment is changing. Stakeholders and members' expectations are changing. So I think you need to be really creative. The leadership has to be creative, innovative to really to address those aspirations there. So I'll just put those things there. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. Yes, Mr. Swami.
Okay, the question, I want to rephrase the question. What is the role of a director in a professional body? Simply put, to our mind, I think, first of all, the director must come well prepared for the meeting. He should actually be responsive with the meeting. He should take part in the meeting. And more important than that, shoulder some responsibility for what is being discussed and take that discussion forward. And always find the directors who find time between meetings are more valuable to the board than those directors who come to the meetings with a blank mind. Because more often than not, much of the work gets done between meetings and not at the meeting. And so I actually always encourage whenever I had an organization to have lots of private meetings with people outside the board, so that much more gets done at the board meeting. Board meeting is more to my mind, a tick-off event. Okay, it's a formal event where you sign off on something as a collective decision-making body. Correct. But if you really want to achieve something, you need to do that between meetings and spend time on the phone and maybe in person to get that going. That's my addition to this.
Great. Dr.
I was just told, Bhadakar, that one of the cabinet meetings of one of the chief minister used to take only half an hour.
Okay.
Because all the agendas were well discussed earlier, the directions are clear. So it is what Mr. Swami says, is just taking off the agenda.
The formal process.
Yes, that's a beautiful point. Yes.
Listen to Gangadhar.
Yes, please.
The competencies.
Yeah, I think the international board that I served, one of the basic thing that, every time I participated in the meeting, I was asked to sign what is called a conflict of interest statement. I will not be allowed to sit in the board meeting unless I sign what is called conflict of interest, which means I declare at the meeting my commitment to the board decisions and to the body as a body. So my commitment is very clear that I don't have a conflict of interest. I was serving 2 international boards, one based in Washington, D.C., other one based in Toronto. Every time I went for both these meetings, I had to declare, and I have to be very cautious that I did not discuss one board, what I discussed in another board, nowhere I could really see. So I had to choose a board, keeping in mind that I will never conflict. I think that's one of the basic purpose. When I'm heading the board, I was a president of a board, I need to be very sure as a president, I set the trend. So I must have a sense of integrity in me. I need to establish it. The second thing is the Secretary General of the board, either Secretary General or the Executive Director, sets the board meetings notes. 15 to 20 days before the board meeting, what is going to be discussed. This is prepared in consultation with the president. So which means notes are well prepared and documented. The third thing is there are committees constituted. When the committees are constituted, there is a continuity between the president and the board of directors. Understand, it's an international board. Today we are all able to talk so freely. I think 2 years ago it did not exist. Thanks to Corona, all of us are back into virtual meetings. That's something that happened. And I think fourth and the last, commitment to result orientation. When I take over as a president, I commit to do in the next 2 years something. I think I need to keep that up, and I need to get the the entire governing board to convince. I need to convince them that they're going to stand with me, or I modify it according to the board decision. All of us are standing together. I think that is an inspiration I need to provide as a leader. Thank you.
Thank you. So, series director, what do you want next?
Oh, you have to sum up the whole session.
Well, I'll just briefly and quickly, give the pointed competencies before we go ahead. What is emerging is to be a good board director. You have to have high listening skill, high sensitivity to members, extreme role clarity and vision clarity, strategic leadership. Be conscientious, committed, take responsibility. Be available. Be available for informal discussions and resolutions rather than bring everything to the table for formal discussions. Above all, ethical behavior, maintain confidentiality. And from the audience, I got a wonderful point. Collaborative leadership is very important. I think it's a wonderful point. Second point is, of course, knowledge in the relevant domain as well as values and focus on the goal. And
nice.
Come up, and which I think is worth, because it reflects on the competencies. We need, since people who come onto boards are themselves a bunch of leaders. When we say leaders in this context, we talk about people with a lot of big egos. So that means you need a super leader who can facilitate and who can handle these people with great amount of capability. So that is the biggest quality which is required, I believe. Now I will just quickly sum up the whole thing, whatever I've been able to.
You can take 1 or 2 questions if you want.
Sure, no problem. I'm always happy with questions.
Should I read one question we received in advance?
Welcome.
No, somebody took the trouble of sending a question to us in advance by writing.
Okay.
Florence McDonald, she is a life member of Harvard Square. Governance is a compliance. It is not measurable. Definitely visible across humanity. So every member is our brand ambassador who should emulate this at every touch point with style and dignity. The challenge facing now is disruption, urgent decision making and technology. I would love to hear your perspectives.
What's the question, Dr.
She's saying, it's a statement, governance is a compliance, it's not measurable, but definitely visible across the community or the association. So every employee is a brand ambassador who should emulate this at every touch point with dignity. It's a statement.
So you have answered the point. Okay.
I think the other statement, I would let it pass.
Yes,
nice statement. Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, we'll move on. Yeah. There was one question which was pending. When more mergers and acquisitions happen, how is it going to affect good governance practices?
No murders, what?
Mergers
and acquisitions of companies happens. It's bound to affect good governance practices. So what's going to happen? Is there anything you could visualize and share?
I'm not very sure the governance will be at risk when you have mergers and acquisitions. The culture will be very difficult to actually manage. There'll be always a cultural shock when 2-3 companies come together. To our mind, governance always led from the top. The new management has to deal with the corporate governance. That I don't think it's going to be impacted by a merger and acquisition. That's my view.
Okay.
And Asha, I think if you talk about corporate governance, when governance happen, when mergers happen, governance actually improves. because people sit down to revisit the rule of engagement, and that actually impacts positive impact on the governance itself. As long as your basic ethos and ethics and values are clearly understood and committed to, governance doesn't get doesn't get impacted negatively in mergers.
Okay.
Okay. Any other observation, gentlemen?
Just one
Right,
point
madam.
for Dr. G.P. Rao, if
Yes.
you permit that.
Yes, sir.
I'm just thinking, Dr. Rao, that the professional associations, they are voluntary organizations, and they have their own mechanism processes for election and selection and all. With all the things that we have discussed today, like the objectives, the performance things, and also the competency, the personal traits of the people, we can make a framework that this is what we require as a good leader who can drive a professional. Is there any way to really put it in practice? How do you put it in practice and say that, okay, Association A is going to look for a leader, how they should go about to really fulfill these things?
Sure. Yes, sir. I have made note of it. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for the insight. Yes, Asha, you are parting.
Yes, we are closing now.
Anything you want to say?
Gentlemen, it's impossible and it's unrequired that I go again point by point, but I would like to say a few things of what touched me personally and which are some of the critical points. In terms of mindset, to be a good board member, you need to have the spirit of a trustee. As a trustee, that means you have ethical orientation and a genuine desire to serve. As a body, you should be evolving. And by being transparent and accountable, you will be serving the cause for which you have gotten into this whole thing in the first place. A key point is that fish rots from the top. So if the leadership itself is, in some way having dodgy practices or are there for the wrong reasons, then, it's very difficult to do much about good governance on these kinds of platforms because they are voluntary bodies. And lastly, I want to make a suggestion. I'm neither a participant nor a speaker, but I think you should give me this opportunity to make a suggestion to all of you. Since you people have taken the first step in getting people from across different bodies, why not? We were talking about having an ombudsman. We were talking about having self-regulation. Why not have members from each of these bodies get together to form this kind of a regulatory body? I think it will be acceptable and it will be hugely powerful. Thank you all. Thank you, audience, for being a wonderful audience, coming up with questions. And now hand over to Dr. G. Rao, the senior.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Asha Bhandarkar. What we do is, I am supposed to list out the takeaways. So I don't want to take the trouble. I will ask the participants, use the chat box. What is that one thing that struck you? You are impressed with one insight, one clarification, one suggestion, one share, one best practice, one ugly thing that we can correct for in future, anything. You just go on writing. In the meanwhile, that's a better way of writing down takeaways. I have noted down all the takeaways. We have recorded this session and we'll have 3 more rounds of webinars like this. Then all these points will make use of, but then what you are writing is very important because you are representing the member community and some of you are leaders, office bearers and all. So while you do that, I will request one of the office bearers of Delhi chapter to get ready to propose one comprehensive vote of thanks.
Dr. Rao,
Yes.
let me
Yes.
interfere.
Yes.
I would like to inform by the time our friends are writing their comments, the next program, the second series will be on 28th of July. Time would be around 7 o'clock. And the moderator of the program will be Mr. Neeraj Gupta, Head Corporate Governance and Public Policy, Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs. Mohammad Musarraf Hussain, Founder, President, Federation of Bangladesh Human Resources Organizations, FBHRO, our Dr. T.V. Rao, co-founder and first president of NHRD network, Mr. Ajanta Dharmasri, past president, Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, Sri Lanka, and past vice president, Asia Pacific Society of SHRM, Dr. Yogesh Upadhyay, president, Federation of International Trainers and Speakers. So this is our next program. So please note and reserve this 28th for Delhi chapter, the second part of Good Governance series. Thank you very much. And now I would request Dr. D.K. Benwet to propose a vote of thanks. Dr. Benwet. Are you there, sir?
You
He
have
has to unmute. He is to be unmute. No.
Is he there?
Yeah, he's there.
Dr. Banwet, we are not able to listen to you. You have to unmute.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mukesh, for giving me this opportunity. This way I can show my gratefulness to my friends, starting from Ashaji, with which or with whom we have had a lot of relationships early on, especially the last IFTDO meeting that we had in the presence of Professor Pritam Singh, and my other colleagues on the panel. Ashok Balyanji, I could not recognize you because now you have a beard on. You were clean shaven early on. I don't know whether you look more handsome then or now, but you look more intellectual now.
It's only a COVID effect.
Yeah. Then we have Srinivasanji, my IMA president, and then we have Akhil Busraji, and of course, many of them which have come in terms of, I've heard of a term called moderator and I heard of a term called curator, and that curator is our own GP Rao Garu, who really brings everything into such a nice place that very good time manager, very good project manager, and is very well able to manage the chairman or the moderator also. So I think a lot of past national presidents, Dr. Sunil Oberoi, Dr. Upadhyay, and also me, I'm also a past president. And I think, as Mukesh would bear me out, a good keen learner, because I always have some pencil along with me. And handsome Upadhyay ji is going great guns from one webinar to another webinar. A lot of office bearers of ISTD, whether it be the Delhi chapter or whether it is the IMA, DMI, or NIPM, etc. I remember when I was the president of ISTD, I had this longing that if many of these organizations which are doing similar type of work could come together. So today, those seeds that were sown, I can see the fruits there today. And all of us are enjoying this lovely get together of people having same interest, whether professional or otherwise. One question that which I put across, but maybe Bhandarkar-ji did not find it fit, the conflict between the vision and the mission statements of these organizations. The elected leaders keep changing, whereas the staff of the executive director and the directors and the office people, they remain stationary. Now, how that alignment is to come in, whether that also changes, and then maybe one set of NCs come up with something, then the next one makes a U-turn, then what does one do in terms of continuity? So I think some hint was given by Mr. Srinivasan, which was a welcome thing, that there needs to be continuity also along with the changes that one is talking about. A very healthy sign, because most of the seminars marketability is by using the word COVID-19. I think this is one of the first seminars which I found which did not have the title COVID-19. But of course, we came into this new norm of working offline or online. And we at the educational institutes like IITs and IIMs have this great problem as to the blend of online and offline. And Mr. Balyan, being an IIT Delhi alumni, I think it would be good if the alumni could also propose how to bring about the realization, how to make it more effective, whether it is training or education or what have you, or through the alumni, whatever it might be. So I think my job was to really propose a hearty vote of thanks. And in between, I got a telephone call from Anita Chauhanji from Kota, the dynamic person there, who will be having Christian March in the webinar tomorrow. And I felt so happy that in one of the IFTDO preconceived meetings we had, that I had made some mantra statement which she has cherished. And she wrote with her fountain pen nib, ink, and she presented that to me. And I understand that Anita said that she would also like to discuss with me one of those mantras. Being a professor, I really don't remember what I had said. So I only hope that what I had said still makes sense and that our friendship will cherish. I think that is where national and international things come. Thank you, Rao Garu, for a wonderful job. And everyone, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Sir, one second, sir. Our Dr. Benwet has forget Dr. Gangadharan's name. So thank you very much, sir.
No, that is because that is home. That is home.
Yeah,
and nothing more, sir. Lot of chapter chairmen from ISTD are here. I thank you all, sir, and your members also. Thank you.
Dr. Gangadharan, my apologies because I thought you will ask me what happened to the results of the fellowship awards. Okay, so maybe that's why.
No.
Sorry for
it's
that.
all in the positive
Thank
spirit.
you once again. Thank you once again.
Positive spirit.
Dr. Rao said it very well. You said it very well. Thank you.
It's our home. It's ISTD. So, with that, this webinar comes to an end, but our role, our commitment, our contribution continues. We will be reaching out to you for your further advice to complete this project. So it's a wonderful show today. Dr. Asha Bhandarkar, Dr. Akhil Basra, Dr. Balyan, Dr. Gangadharan, Mr. Swami, and Mr. Mukesh Jain leading from the front, and all the veterans being present here. So wonderful thing. We have recorded this. We'll share the recording with you. We also recorded the chat box because a lot of ideas are there in the chat box. So everything that you said, you have written, is being captured and preserved and will be utilized. And please join us in the next session also. Some will be repetition, some will be value add, some will be revalidation. Thank you so much. So good night to you. Good night to you.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone, really kind of you, and we'll meet soon on 28th at